Hey folks, well, welcome you back to another edition on the mygunvalues.com YouTube channel here. Today we've got kind of a rare firearm, kind of unusual firearm in a couple of different ways for you. And like a lot of times when I discuss the older weapons, you know, we got to do a backstory here so it makes sense. If you guys are, you know, you've been into firearms for, well, like me, for over 40 years, then you're going to know a lot of what I'm about to say. But keep in mind, somebody had to tell you way back when too. So I'm going to cover the cartridge first and a little bit of the history of the gun, and then we'll discuss this particular weapon. We might end up breaking this up into 2 episodes. I have a feeling this one's going to be a little longer than we like to put up for 1 episode. So on that note, let's discuss real quick. This is an 1895 Winchester. But to start out with, we're going to talk more about the cartridge it's chambered for than the gun itself. And this, it says right here, and the close-up camera will pick it up to some degree, but it says 30 US, model 1903. A lot of you may not know that the 30-06, which we all know and love today, or most of us know and love today, didn't arrive at its final form until 1906. It actually came out in 1901, had some adaptions and some experimentation, and it was actually adopted by the U.S. military as the 30 U.S. model 1903. So in layman's terms today, just like we call the 30-06 the 06 for the year of introduction, the 03 was called the 3003. Nobody chambers it anymore. I'm not aware of anybody actually loading 3003 ammunition commercially. So, but we want to back up and how we got there and why we only had a cartridge available for 3 years. So let's back up. You got to remember, black powder, smokeless powder came out in the late 1880s. And we started to transition from black to smokeless. If you look at the U.S. history, until 1892, our official sidearm was the 45-70 trapdoor. Shot a 400 grain lead bullet in, in a single shot with little thumb flip open lever. Once the smokeless revolution began in Europe, France invented it, Germany and Britain copied it, and they were all right there together, because Europe, they weren't all the lovey-doveys they are today. You still had lots of wars and disputes and everything else. So you come out with the 3040 Krag in 1892. Now this was also called the 30 US. It was the first 30 caliber US cartridge, so it was just simply the 30 US. 3040 Krag is something we've named it later because it was chambered in, it was a 30 caliber cartridge, 40 grains of powder. It was loaded with smokeless from the very beginning. It was never officially loaded with black powder by anybody that I'm aware of. And the rifle it was chambered in, and we've got one here. We've never done a video on it, but I will eventually. You flipped open a little loading gate on the side. You threw the cartridges in one at a time. And when you closed the cartridge, it stacked them right up. As long as you pointed them the right way when you threw them in, the way it was constructed, it would stack the cartridges up, and it would go under the bolt and come up and chamber up. It was a very smooth bolt action. And everybody was just happy as a clam with it until the Spanish-American War came around, and everybody figured out that the Mexican and Spanish, or the Spanish soldiers, using the 7x57 Mauser with stripper clips, could reload much quicker, and they could shoot farther than we could with our old round-nosed bullets. So our military doesn't learn real well, or very quickly sometimes. So, immediately after the Spanish-American War ended, we decided that this cartridge was obsolete. Now, originally it was loaded with a 220 grain round nose, I believe it was a Cupro nickel jacketed bullet. This is 180 grain Remington factory round is what this is, but I've got it out here for demonstration purposes with the round nose. So we start looking for a replacement. We come up with the 1903 Springfield, which everybody is probably very familiar with if they're into older firearms like I am. The 1903, they still used the same round bullet. They hadn't really figured out that Spitzer bullets were more aerodynamic and would carry better, had better downrange ballistics yet. So they come out with the same 220 grain bullet in a case. Now I don't have a 3003 case here. This is a 3006 case. It is a hand load. For those of you who are used to it, that's a Barnes triple shock bullet in the end of it. But it gives you the idea. It was a 150 grain Spitzer bullet is what they came out with in 1906, and it was full metal jacket. The neck was just slightly longer on the 3003 than it was on the 3006. And they did this to go away from that 220 grain bullet because they found that the 220 grain bullet was causing a lot of throat erosion, and it didn't have the downrange ballistics that a lot of the new European rounds that were coming out with Spitzer bullets had. So they did away with the 220 grain round nose and went to 150 grain Spitzer pointed bullet in the case with the slightly shorter neck. So that means we had a cartridge that was only around for 3 years as our official military cartridge. It was all having to do with that we were learning so much during the changeover from black powder to smokeless and ballistics, and the Army ordnance officers had to play catch up in a hurry, and they adopted a lot of guns that didn't last very long, and ammunition and everything else. They really had to go back to the drawing board. So that's what brought about this rifle. You know, it's no small secret today that a military firearm chambering becomes very popular in the United States. 30-40 Krag, when those were sold off as surplus, they became very popular. The 30-03, it didn't have a real long time to gain a following, but yet it ended up being chambered in sporting arms. Then you had the 30-06, which of course even today is probably the most popular rifle cartridge in existence, although the 223 is probably giving it a run for its money today with the younger crowd. Then you had, after the 30-06, we went to the 308, and after the 308 we then went to the 5.56 or the 223, if you will, in the civilian version. So, you know, Winchester, as quick as they could get this rifle to market, they came out with it chambered for the 1903. Problem was, again, it's 30 US, it's still a 30 caliber cartridge. It was the model 1903. And then you had the 30 US model 1906. Now, if you're thoroughly confused, don't feel like the Lone Ranger. A lot of people are. But that's the history of just a brief history of the 30-03, 30-06. Again, it was all due to the transition from black to smokeless and the discovery that we were pushing the bullets fast enough now that the round nose bullet was aerodynamically inefficient. So you go to a Spitzer bullet and get a better downrange trajectory. So, you know, that's what it all came down to. So that's where this rifle comes in, again, being chambered in the 30-03. It's kind of an oddball, kind of a rarity, but I wanted to discuss it with you, discuss the cartridge, so I understood what I was talking about for those who didn't know what the 30-03 was. So I think that's probably long enough that I'm going to go ahead and split it up into 2 videos. So with that, on that note, as always, we want to thank you for watching. If you if you have anything you'd like to see, anything you'd like to discuss, anything you'd like us to do for you, feel free to post a comment here, or you can contact us through the mygunvalues.com website. Thanks for watching.